Do you give to charity? Does it feel like you're making a difference when you donate money or time to a cause? You're probably saying yes, but the sad truth is, all you're actually doing is promoting further poverty and deprivation. Does that surprise you? Well, let me explain how that works and why it's a direct result of the way our society is set up, essentially a capitalistic society as described by Marx. Yes, we're talking about Marx. Mention his name and someone will call you a commie. But that's just leftover Cold War propaganda. The US pushed anti-communist rhetoric so effectively that communism is still considered a dirty word by many, seen as an attack on the dominant capitalistic regime. I'm not suggesting communism is any better, but this fake news about Marx makes people blind to the flaws in our society, which are highlighted by Marx and which can be read by everyone and should be able to be read by everyone without fear of being labelled a communist. Critiquing our current capitalistic society does not equate with being a communist, even if the Cold War propaganda would have you believe otherwise. Let's get back to charity. Charitable organisations fill gaps where social safety nets like welfare programs, healthcare, education and housing fail. These systems are designed to provide sustainable and comprehensive support to the less well off. When they fall short, individuals rely on charity instead. So far so good, right? So what's the problem with giving to charity? Charity acts as a band-aid solution, offering immediate relief like food, clothing or temporary shelter, rather than tackling the underlying issues like unemployment, lack of education or systemic inequality. This creates a cycle where individuals remain dependent on charitable aid without achieving long-term self-sufficiency. Plus, charitable aid is often distributed based on the donor's priorities, not the community needs, leading to uneven support and unaddressed systemic gaps. So larger charities like Oxfam get high levels of donations, while smaller charities like Refuge, which support women and children experiencing domestic violence, get far less. Hi everyone, I'm Waseem and this channel is all about improving yourself mentally, physically and emotionally. Welcome to the Life Hack Revolution, where I give you shortcuts to becoming the best version of yourself. If you haven't done so already, click subscribe. Now let's get back to the video. Where does Marx fit into all this? Marx believed that capitalism inherently produces and perpetuates inequality, relying on the exploitation of the working class, the proletariat, by the owning class, the bourgeoisie. From a Marxist perspective, charity is a band-aid solution addressing the symptoms of inequality, which are poverty, without challenging the structural causes, which is capitalistic exploitation. It provides temporary relief without altering the power dynamic that created and sustains poverty. Now, why haven't you heard about this before? And why does it sound so wrong to say, stop giving to charity? Well, as with a lot of these things, the norms in society are rarely questioned. No one will ever question that giving to charity is bad. It's so obviously a good thing, right? This norm, along with all the other norms which lie in our subconscious, block us from thinking about this. This block is actually a feature of capitalism. Marx argued that the ruling class controls not only the means of production, but also the means of mental production, shaping the dominant ideology, culture and values to serve their interests. This is where our norms come from. Look at my video on the norms of society coming out soon on this channel. So these norms, this dominant ideology, justifies and sustains the existing order, promoting beliefs like meritocracy, the belief that individuals are rewarded and advanced based on their abilities, talents and efforts alone, rather than their social class, wealth, family connections. Why promote meritocracy? Well, the idea that only hard work will provide success leads people to blame personal failings or bad luck for their outcomes, rather than systemic exploitation. Why do you think those rags to riches stories are so widely promoted? For example, people often cite Elon Musk as a self-made billionaire due to his success with companies like Tesla and SpaceX, when the lesser-known truth is that Elon's father was a wealthy South African engineer who financially supported many of Elon's initial startups. Or Jeff Bezos, who is widely known as founding Amazon and becoming one of the richest people in the world. Lesser known fact that Bezos' parents invested $245,573 in Amazon during its early days. This can be summed up by Marx's concept of false consciousness. That refers to the ways in which members of the working class, the proletariat, are misled and deceived into accepting and supporting the interests of the ruling class, the bourgeoisie, thereby perpetuating their own exploitation within the capitalistic society. Charities reinforce false consciousness by providing immediate relief, obscuring the exploitative nature of capitalism and reducing the impetus for systemic reform. Charities maintain the status quo, promoting the idea that existing structures are sound and only need minor adjustments, not comprehensive restructuring. An example of this is the increasing cost of food and wages stagnation, meaning that groups such as the Trussell Trust distributed a total of 2.5 million emergency food parcels to people in crisis last year. This poverty in the UK requires a systemic reform to ensure people working full-time should not require food banks. Imagine a disaster if these food banks were not in place. Would the government have been forced to step up and make systemic changes as a result? False consciousness also prevents the development of class consciousness, the awareness of one's class position and collective working class interests. Without class consciousness, the working class is less likely to unite and challenge the capitalistic system. It also leads to fragmentation as workers see each other as competitors rather than allies. As long as you're doing better than the Joneses, you're happy. In the past 10 years, we've accepted lower wages, poorer working conditions and limited opportunities as inevitable, rather than the imposed conditions that can be changed. One of my favourite grime artists is a guy called Akala. He often raps about poverty and the structural reform needed, reflecting this lack of social consciousness. Worth checking out. You go to the pub Friday night, you'll fight with a guy, don't know what for, but won't fight with a guy, suit and a tie, who sends your kids to die in a war. So hopefully you can now entertain, if not fully accept, the idea that charity pacifies the working class, reduces social unrest and stops meaningful change. Ironically, by alleviating the worst effects of poverty, charity perpetuates poverty as it reduces pressure on the system to be reformed.